and then he moves his head left and moves his head right. As he moves his head right, to the right, he is shot in the right ear, right? And you talk about an instance of millimeters, of centimeters, of a very small amount of space. If you don't move to the right, the back of your head is still in that same position, and it gives a bigger target for the shooter. Is this one of those things where, and we'll go into the other details, is this one of those things where this is a very lucky former president of the United States?
Elohim mistakel on President Trump. God must have been watching down on the President Trace. Snipers typically train to shoot into the cerebral cortex or the cerebellum. It's the top of the brain stem. It decapacitates you, keeps your hands from moving. It's how we train in counterterror. Trump turning to the right. Again, this is about the distance of the shot, 130 meters.
130 yards,
yeah. 130 yards. Trace, that's a putt. Anyone can put a .223 optic on a target from that distance and hit. It's not a difficult shot to make. The fact that the president was off to the right, if his head had been straight and that round, and I'm going to quote one of my law enforcement associates here, I'm not going to name names, but an 18-year sniper competitive shooter made it very clear to me that had the president's head been straight and that round had gone into the ear, it would have been lights out. The fact that he just happened to be turned this way with that shot coming in is what saved his life. Now, obviously, there's some other failures here. I don't want to start beating down on the Secret Service.
Nor should we, because we don't know enough.
We don't know enough. The investigation is still being conducted. You know, the body is still warm, and let them do their business. But I will tell you this. The FBI works on what's called a multi-ring security package for the personal protection of the president. They call it the bubble. And what that means is it would take a multi-failure event in order for an attacker to be successful. Part of the reason why the president is alive, and when, again, the footage is still kind of speckled, it hasn't really been assembled yet, just bits and pieces that we've been seeing online. The fact is that one of those rings, that second or third ring, which is the counter snipers, a surveillance element, those sharpshooters, which you saw on that roof, there's been some footage, ended up sending shots back as quickly as they could and ended up neutralizing that sniper. So a hat tip to those guys. A lot of armchair quarterbacks out there beaten up. But what I have heard, and what's interesting to me, is that there were multiple requests made to Director Cheadle to increase the amount of manpower directly around the immediate perimeter of the president. I can't tell you if the levels of protection are higher for a standing president or if they're lower for an out president.
I think they are. I mean, that's the whole thing. And then once he is confirmed as a nominee, and the FBI would not confirm this, nor would the state police, and then once he is confirmed, and we have questions out to the Secret Service, once he is confirmed as the nominee, which would happen this week, apparently there is a more robust presence going forward. So that is there. I'm curious, though, as you look at this and you look at the investigation here, they say there were no suspicious instances. There were no red flags. We talked about that going into this. So nobody was forewarned, and yet the reporting is they were warned that there was somebody climbing up the outside of a building they call AGR. It's a glass and plastics manufacturer, and they manufacture drinking containers for the most part. We don't know any connection that the shooter might or might not have with that, but we know that this building was outside of the perimeter, the security perimeter. But the building was 130 yards away, and as Aaron articulated there, that is not a far distance when you're talking about a high-powered weapon, and the president was there. It's interesting why anybody would be allowed on a tall building. I have been to a gazillion of these types of rallies. The tall buildings are the first and foremost to always be secured.
So here's my response, Trey. It's a good question because there's a lot of pieces here and it's all kind of floating around. What would be the motive of the Secret Service to not protect every building within all of that vicinity? They want to hit everything. So again, where I'm leaning and where it's taking me to, the response elements were on target. The man was neutralized. They put him down as quick as they could. By the way, less than a half a second in that inner immediate perimeter protecting the president. Less than a second, they were immediately on President Trump, covering him, creating that protective shield. But what would be the benefit of the Secret Service not covering that building where the shot was fired from? So my opinion, and where it leads me to believe, is there is there had to have been a lack of resources, because what would it have been to put a couple of agents on that building to do what's called sterilize it, so that nobody could get in, nobody could get up, nobody could get around, and then have a couple of those long guns focusing on that building. So that leaves me to believe that there was a failure in the manpower. That's where I'm leaning right now. And had that building been covered accordingly, I believe that shot couldn't have gotten off because it would have been sterile. Now, look, there's paper. There's going to be emails, there's going to be phone calls, there's going to be paper. So let that investigation kind of play out, and then we'll see if there was any major gaps in the security preparation based on those requests.
Aaron, stand by, if you will. I want to bring in former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, as well as former D.C. homicide detective. Do we have all of these people together?